Hello friends, and welcome to day 15 of Drenched in Wonder Cannabis Conversations. We have covered some stuff in these episodes, my gosh, and we still have a way to go. Lots of great stuff to dive into, friends. And I realize that with anyone who is listening right now, we've all got a kind of different stance on cannabis. We've all got a different kind of experience, obviously. And I'm curious to know of who is listening or watching right now. Are you a cannabis user yourself? Are you curious about cannabis? Tell me in the comments. So for today, I want to dive into the topic of medicinal cannabis and specifically accessing medicinal cannabis in Australia. It seems more and more that regardless of a country's stance on cannabis legalization for recreational use, it's generally agreed that cannabis as a medicine is exceptional, that it has the power to help or to treat a wide range of conditions, of ailments and symptoms. And I suspect that for most who are watching this video, whether you're in Australia or not, it would likely be a similar situation. Every place is different, of course, and obviously do your own research. Before we dive in, as always, I'm not a medical professional, just to be clear. And so naturally, as medicinal cannabis is growing in popularity and more people are talking about it, and it's proving helpful for so many things, a lot of people are curious about it. And a lot of people who may not necessarily think that they are eligible for medicinal cannabis. And this was my experience. I have a soft spot in my heart for the black market. It's a whole realm that I never really wanted to go into, but it was the only way to access it at the time. And there's obviously an additional element of risk as we start moving into that world. So very quickly, I started to explore the idea of accessing medicinal cannabis. Can I do that? Am I eligible? Is that even possible? There are a few boxes that one needs to check in order to be eligible. But the good news is that we need not be daunted by this criteria. As I mentioned, there are so many different things that cannabis can help to treat. Of the conditions that are on this list, I have genuinely found that cannabis helps with anxiety and also helps with sleep. My symptoms for both of these are relatively low, but also are genuinely helped by cannabis. So my seeking of medicinal cannabis for what is, I guess arguably one might say, mostly recreational use, it felt justifiable and fair to do that. The only thing that provided a moment's hesitation was for me and for people like me coming into this system effectively as recreational users. Is this going to clog up the system and stop cannabis medicines from reaching people who really need them? It seemed that this would not be the case. And as medicinal cannabis continues to grow and the industry continues to grow, it's accessible and I don't feel like I'm stopping it from reaching someone else. There was a time perhaps when that would have been the case, but I get the feeling that we've moved past that. And so I found a service, and what appealed to me about this particular service was that there was no upfront cost. You book in and you have a phone call with a doctor or a nurse, and they ask you some questions around why you're seeking medicinal cannabis and talk about your medical history and all of that. And after I had my phone call, I was approved for medicinal cannabis use within the week. And then once that had happened, I was able to purchase the cannabis through their online system. And a few days later, it arrived at my door, the very first cannabis that I purchased legally in my home country. And I opened it up and I smelled the flower and I knew I was onto a winner. Not only cannabis that is legally purchased, but it's also cannabis that is carefully regulated and seemingly of a very high quality. This is what it came in, a little white tub. High quality cannabis flower, purchased legally, delivered directly to my door. Game changer. Friends, for a long time, there's been this conversation around medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis. And as I've mentioned before, this word recreational, it doesn't quite hit the mark for me. You know, it's so much more than just recreation. And one may argue that any recreational use is also medicinal. Any medicinal use is also recreational. But I won't go down that path for now. How does the price compare between the black market and medicinal cannabis? Roughly the same, give or take. Some services charge an upfront fee for the doctor's appointment and to access the system, but this one didn't, and the only cost was for the flower itself. Now, the good thing is, with a valid medical prescription, we are now obviously able to have and to use cannabis. Now I can travel with it interstate. I can take it on planes with me. Now, even though with a prescription we're now using cannabis legally, it's not total freedom, obviously. Driving is still a highly contentious topic, as naturally it would be. But thanks to the work of a few politicians who are striving to make change in this area, if a medicinal user tests positive during a roadside drug test, it's not an immediate suspension of that person's license as it once was. I'm going to circle back to the topic of driving, but obviously it's something we want to be mindful of, and it's an understandable barrier for a lot of people who wish to explore cannabis. Workplace drug testing in the workplaces where this happens, this can also pose a risk, but as the stigma continues to diminish, and of course as a medicinally prescribed thing, fingers crossed this isn't an issue. Friends, it may not seem like a lot, but this move to more readily accessible and available medicinal cannabis is a huge shift. So many who find benefit in cannabis have moved from this kind of hiding, from this like, okay, we're actually criminals right now, to holding a script for legal use. And this pathway, it changes people's relationship to cannabis. We now have use that is more conscious, more informed, and of course, ongoing access to medical assistance with cannabis. Just that simple mindset shift away from, by doing this soul-nourishing thing that doesn't hurt anyone else, that offers good and calm and creativity to my life, I'm committing a crime. It's not yet legalization for recreational use, but it's a good step in the meantime, and it's worth looking into, particularly for my fellow Australians. And if you are curious and based in Australia and would like to explore further, I've included the link to the service that I've used in the description below. What about you, friends? Have you had any luck with the medicinal cannabis pathway? Let me know. And also do me a quick favor, whichever platform you're using to listen or watch this, give it a like, rate the show, subscribe, do whatever you can. It all helps, friends. And of course, if you'd like to read more about my cannabis story, check out the book at drenchedinwonder.com. Thank you for joining me for this episode, friends. As always, be safe, be smart. See you soon.